Hey guys, it's the first Tuesday of the month.
And you know what that means.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Amber.
It's a supernatural true crime and chill. So thanks to one of our lovely listeners and one of my really good friends, actually, Crystal Capole, Amber and I have decided to dedicate our Spooky Tuesdays this season to different states and their urban legends that surround kind of like, certain deaths and accidents and stuff like that.
And honestly, we are so excited because at some point we'll be doing a local legend from our hometown.
We are, and quite honestly, I'm so excited to see what you come up with for that because I was obsessed with Lady of the Lake when I was younger. Like, I read all the books on it. I read all the articles on it. I read, like I used to, look out the window when we passed the lake and, say her name and stuff just to see if, she would, appear and stuff like that. Like, I was obsessed with that legend when I was younger. So when I found out that you were actually going to probably work with somebody on that, that's perfect. And this can tie into that. So we're super stoked. But
there's actually a documentary that they're working on filming right now that I'm going to be helping out with, I've been helping out with. So,
and honestly, and it's really cool because it does kind of give way into how we want to do it with it's like an actual murder case, but has an urban legend associated with it, which is kind of what this week's episode is. This one is actually based out of Tennessee, which is where I'm currently at right now. The site is actually about an hour and a half away from me, which is actually really cool because it's on my list of must-see sites and everything. So I am super stoked to have it open up again. It's currently closed right now due to COVID, unfortunately. But once things kind of slow down a little bit, I'm super stoked to go look. This week's episode is actually all about the Bell Witch of Adams, Tennessee.
Let's get started.
Okay, so disclaimer before we put anything out there, because I feel like we have to do this now. Any and all things said by us are our own opinions, and they do not reflect the image or the views of anybody else that might get offended by us talking about this. So I feel like I have to say that now. But this case is insane. There were movies based off of it. There's tons of books based off of it. There's articles, there's urban legends based on everything.
Yeah.
So basically the story goes, in 1804, John Bell Sr. moved to Adams, Tennessee with his wife and children. They had actually just relocated from North Carolina, and while there in Tennessee, John and his family had joined a church, and John had actually become a deacon in it. So back then, when you became a deacon in a church, you basically were very high up. People respected you. You were a very valued member of society and stuff like that. Their life, by all accounts, was actually really good. They ended up prospering really well in Tennessee, honestly. There was no record of why they actually moved from North Carolina from what I could find. But, I mean, that could also tie into one of the theories that we're going to talk about at the end. The Bell children were growing up really well. The family made a really good name for themselves, and no one ever really got into any trouble from the family. However, in 1817, that all changed. Because it always does. Now, there are tons of theories of why this haunting happened to this family and why it focused mainly on John's daughter, Betsy Bell, and John. But like with all our episodes, we lay out the case, we discuss the theories at the end, and we kind of go from there.
And honestly, I'm really excited to hear them. But yes, facts first.
Okay, so 1817 rolls around. Okay, the family had been there for a few years by now and everything. People have been growing. John and his wife, Lucy, had a few kids because, back then it was customary for you to have more than 4 children. Yep. And so Elizabeth, Betsy Bell, was the youngest of all their children. In 1817, Betsy actually started getting terrorized by a poltergeist. Technically, people kind of refer to the thing as a spirit, but poltergeist, honestly, poltergeist sounds a little bit more correct from what I've seen, just because it literally terrorized the hell out of this poor girl. Like I said, she was the youngest daughter in the family, but she wasn't the only one targeted. Her father was too. The hauntings were pretty mild and until Betsy got engaged to be married. And then once she got engaged, everything just kind of ramped up and the spirit seemed really pissed off.
I mean, did they ever figure out who or what the spirit was?
All sources say her name was Kate Batts. I have read multiple different articles and all the research I've done on this story throughout the years that I have looked into it. Everybody says it was Kate Batts. Now, how she started haunting the family, many theories. There really isn't one set theory on how she started haunting the family, but that was her name is Kate. But all documentation points to this woman as the entity that was basically ruining John and Betsy's lives. Like I said, the hauntings started out pretty normal. Each member of the family kind of just saw really strange visions. John saw like a black wolf that he tried to shoot at, and it kind of just disappeared when he shot at it. Betsy saw a girl in a green dress hanging from a tree, swinging. Betsy's brother, John Jr., actually saw like an old man in like this weird hat and everything that just vanished and would follow him around the property. Like they all saw like weird entities and apparitions and stuff around the property and everything, or like around the house. There would be like knocking on like the walls and the doors in the middle of the night, like weird scratching noises coming from outside that sounded like somebody was trying to get in. They would wake up and they would see like teeth marks on the end of the beds and stuff, and like invisible dogs barking. Like, yeah, it was really scary shit. Like it was, but it wasn't enough for them to be like, hey, you know what? This is too much of a burden, because it's like the spirit never actually targeted them directly. It was just like, just around. John actually also started experiencing paralysis in his mouth around the same time. So that was when they were kind of like, oh my God, this, like, something's happening.
And that could also be blamed on it being, 1817 and many of the sicknesses they had back then.
Right? Like, it honestly, I think of like all the sicknesses that could cause facial paralysis. Like he could have had like a mild heart attack and nobody caught it, so he had facial paralysis. Or like he could have gotten like some kind of infection from like a cut or something and had mild facial paralysis. So it really could have been anything. But then you start kind of getting like a little bit deeper into the poltergeist stuff. Okay, so like around this time that John started getting like the facial paralysis, sheets would like be flung off the beds as like the kids slept in them. Like the kids would like feel their ankles be grabbed and be like just like yanked off the beds and stuff. Like the girls would get their hair pulled. Like Betsy would have like her hair be pulled, and like she'd like levitate in like one of her rooms and stuff. Like she'd wake up with like deep scratches on her back, bruises all over her body, other injuries that would happen like even when she was awake. Like they couldn't figure out like what the hell was going on with this poor girl. Like she was getting tortured by this spirit. Like it was to the point where like they had a family friend stay with them and stuff. And he witnessed these strange occurrences and went from, oh, it's probably in your mind, to holy shit, this is insane. Because once the family friend came and stayed with them, the bells, like they were able to confirm that the bells weren't just crazy. Okay. Like they were able to confirm that they weren't making this stuff up. And like and like there was another person who actually created a test for this supposed witch and stuff, like this supposed spirit. And because he thought the bells were crazy. He thought the bells were making it up to like, oh, like this is what's going on and everything. And then he actually went and stayed with the bells, and this test got brought up, and he was like, nope, they're haunted. There's something definitely going on in this damn house. They're not lying. Oh my God, get me the hell out of here. So James was the man who was the friend who eventually stayed with them. He actually asked the spirit like who they were and what they wanted and stuff. Because, I guess back then, like talking to spirits was like a normal thing. Like, I'm sorry, no. And so I guess the spirit answered, quote, I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but I have been disturbed, unquote.
That's pretty specific.
Yeah. So apparently, like, the spirit tried to say, like, she was buried in Native American burial ground that was disturbed, and sent the two bellboys on a treasure hunt, so to speak. Like, it was, like, this whole thing was just super freaking weird. Her speaking to this family wasn't a rarity. And I'm not talking about, like, possessing, like, one of the family members. I'm talking, like, actually speaking to the family and stuff. Like actually speaking to the family. After John Sr. died, John Jr. actually got a visit from this spirit, and she sat down and she talked with him, and she's like, your dad had to die. Like, your dad had to die. But she wouldn't give a reason of why he had to die. Right? That was my face. I was like, what the hell is going on with this? So like I said, her speaking to the bells wasn't weird. It was actually a very frequent thing. She would this It's actually quite comical, like what she used to do to them, honestly. Like what she say, she would tell them like different reasons why she would be haunting them. So like like I said, like, one of the things was like, oh, I'm disturbed in a Native American burial ground. And she sent the boys on a treasure hunt, like wild goose chase. And then she'd be like, oh, well, I have unfinished business. Or she'd say something like I'm bored and I'm haunting you and stuff. Like she would just basically just be giving all these like quacked out reasons of why she was haunting them.
So
Or she
I'm
would
just
talk to
curious,
them.
are they sure she was a ghost? Because it
Yes.
sounds
Yes.
pretty like a person just messing with them.
No, they were definitely sure she was a ghost. Like they were definitely fucking sure she was a ghost. Cause like that was my thing. I was like, are we sure this is a ghost? No, like there were multiple people who like she was a ghost. Like she was transparent. You could put her hand, like she was a ghost. Right? Right? So one of the things she did is she would tell them sermons because like here's what she would do is like she would like because they would be like because like they thought that they'd be like prove to us that you're actually a ghost and that you're not real and stuff and just screwing with us. And so she would tell them sermons from two different churches 13 miles apart, word for word, as they were going on while standing there in the living room.
13 miles, that's not ironic or anything. So
right,
she talked about other people to the family she was haunting.
yes. So she would go to different homes in the village and then come back to the family and be like, hey, guess what Susan's doing? Like straight up, she would do like that was my thing. I read different like articles and books that's what she would do. Like the Bell family would know things about other people in town. Like she would sit there like a little old biddy and just gossip with the family. Be like, hey, guess what Susan's doing? Hey, so
bored.
John from 3 cabins down is doing this with his wife. Oh, guess who has a mistress? Like literally, she would just sit there and just like I said, it kind of reminded me of like that little old woman that would like just sit there and talk a lot of crap about everybody and knew everything about everybody in the thing. And what's even weirder is like she tortured the hell out of John and Betsy. Okay, like tortured the hell out of John and Betsy. But she showed a lot of affection towards Lucy, John's wife. She would like sing to her. She would give her flowers. She'd call her the most beautiful woman to walk the earth. Like she was like fawning over this woman.
But tortured her daughter.
Yeah, like I'm telling you, this whole story is so insane. Like, if read the books and the articles. Like I'm telling our listeners right now to read the books and the articles on this because it's freaking crazy. Like you sit there and you're like, what the hell is going on? And it's even worse because you think like this is something that should happen in like now, and it's something that happened in like the 1800s. So you're like, what? So she would call John like Old Jack. And I haven't found anything of like why she would call him Old Jack or whatever, but she hated this guy. Like she would straight up be like, yeah, I'm going to kill you. Like she told him that she intended to kill him, and she would tell him different ways that she would, and she would curse him frequently and just basically make his life a living hell. Like just torture the hell out of him. And eventually she poisoned and killed him. Yeah.
So I mean, this really sounds quite unbelievable, obviously. Right. We have a random ghost in the 1800s.
Right?
Who liked to gossip and talked frequently. And they didn't I don't know, leave the house.
And like that's my thing is like, and that's kind of like where like the theories come in and stuff, which we'll get to in a second because I have some theories that I'm going to go over with you. But she didn't leave after John died.
Why? What?
Like she actually interrupted the mourning, like the family's mourning of his death by singing drinking songs loudly from the top of her lungs.
So was she like, and no offense to my Irish friends, but was she Irish?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I mean, it wouldn't be surprising considering the large amount of Irish immigration.
But she would like that's what she did is she interrupted the family's mourning of his death by singing drinking songs.
I can't imagine getting to a place where it's so normal to have a disembodied voice talk to you.
Right.
that you just put up with it.
Right? Like, I'm sitting here, like, at that point, like, when does it become too much? Like, I couldn't find any information on why they didn't move.
I mean, killing a guy
Maybe
seems
they
like a
were
bit
afraid
much.
that if they moved, like, she would follow them. Like, I don't know.
It's true.
But eventually Betsy actually got so tired of the treatment from the ghost that she ended up calling off her engagement in 1821. When she did, the witch said that she was leaving but would return in 7 years. And she did return for a few weeks, but Lucy and the kids who were at home still, and that was her two of her sons, they just ignored her and she left. She came for about a week and they just ignored her and she just dipped out. Like, she was like, okay, bye.
Did she wait the 7 years like she said she would?
Yeah, she came back 7 years. Exactly.
Okay, but no one was able to figure out what was going on.
Okay, so my favorite part, the theories of why everything. Theory number 1, okay? Kate Batts was an old woman who lived on land that John wanted. When she refused to give it up, he killed her and he took it.
So, in other words, he killed her, so she came back and just haunted the crap out of him.
Exactly. And that is one of the main theories and stuff. This theory and actually the third theory that we're going to discuss are two of the main theories. So that's actually one of the main theories, is that because John, from what I could find, John, like, he owned a lot of land. He did. He owned a lot of land and stuff. And back then, you know, if you were a woman and you owned land that a man wanted, it was very easy for that man to get it. And if you didn't want to give it up, there was nothing stopping them from accusing you of witchcraft or killing you. And even if they did accuse you of witchcraft, this wasn't Salem, Massachusetts. Like, they didn't burn witches to this at the stake. They just ostracized you to the woods, or you ran away from the town.
It depends on the town.
Though, Salem was really the only place that, like, because people would automatically think, oh, well, she was a witch, so obviously they would try to burn her. No, Salem, Massachusetts was really the only place that they would actually burn witches. And even then, it was very rare that they would actually burn the witches. Like, they would hang the witches, they would crush the witches to death, they would drown the witches, they would do just about everything else besides burn them. But like, in other places on the East Coast and everything back then, like, she probably was able to just kind of like live by herself. And so a lot of people think that she had really good land. Like, she had really good land that he wanted, stuff that you can hunt on, stuff that you can grow crops on and everything, and she just didn't want to give it up. So John killed her one night and buried her. And just nobody said anything because she didn't really have anybody in the village to, like, check on her, or, like, that was her family and stuff like that. Like, for all intents and purposes, this woman was very much alone. Like, she didn't have any family or any children or any friends. Like, she was a hermit. She was very much alone. So John easily could have just, like, killed her and taken her land, which honestly then caused her to come back and just screw with his life until he died.
Well, and I mean, if she was that lonely in life, she was probably lonely in death as well.
Oh yeah, exactly. And, you know, if she's singing drinking songs at a funeral loudly, she's like the embodiment of petty. Like,
here's my question: how many people were at that funeral?
I feel like it was enough to, like, back up the family story to be like, yeah, no, there was some weird shit going on at this funeral. Like, could you imagine just sitting there, like, supporting the family, and all of a sudden just this disembodied voice just starts singing drinking songs at the top of their lungs? Like,
can I imagine it? Yes. Would I want to be there? No.
Yeah, exactly. So theory number 2 is that Kate was a woman that John had murdered, probably because he had, like, you know, slept with her, or, like, they had an affair, and that she had gotten pregnant, and that she had found out, and that he had found out, and then he killed her and stuff. And that's why she came back to haunt him. So a lot of people feel like it was, like, because, you know, affairs were super common back then and everything, and all that stuff. But with John being a deacon of the church and being in a very high spot in society, it probably would not be good for him or his family to find out that he had knocked up some local woman that he shouldn't have been sleeping with in the first place.
Yeah. Also might explain why she called him Old Jack. Like, maybe he told her his name was Jack.
Yeah. Like a lot, and honestly, from a few articles and books that I have found, that's actually it's not a popular theory, but it definitely is a theory that could kind of explain like the old Jack name and why she specifically chose him and his youngest daughter, because like because literally none of the other family was affected by this. None of the other family was affected by this ghost. Like, yeah, the children had some of their hair pulled or like their blankets pulled off, but at the end of the day, Betsy was the one that had all of the physical marks and the scars and the scratches and the bruises and all this stuff and everything. And John was the one that was targeted as well and stuff. So it's like people are thinking maybe like, she was pregnant and he killed her. And so she's getting back at him. And I think Betsy was actually the only girl of the family, I believe.
Oh.
I believe. I'm not sure. So if somebody has anything different for that, then go ahead and shoot us a message to tell us. But I believe that Betsy was the only girl of the family. So if she was, then that could be a good reason of like, oh, hey, I'm just going to screw your guys' life. Now, the last theory, and the theory that honestly makes a lot of sense, especially for the time, and it's also a theory that I actually like because it kind of puts together. John was actually the one abusing Betsy, like sexually abusing her and everything. And the witch was only after John. Like that, all the injuries that happened to Betsy were from John himself. And that's why he was poisoned, is because it wasn't the witch who poisoned him. It was his wife that killed him. And that's how he died. So
Poor Betsy.
this is a huge theory that has kind of floated around with the family and everything, because like we had mentioned before we started recording, Bell Witch inspired, Blair Witch Project. Bell Witch inspired a few other like found footage movies and stuff. One of the movies that the Bell Witch inspired was An American Haunting. And so An American Haunting is literally based off the Bell Witch haunting and stuff. And spoiler alert for any of you guys who have not seen the movie and everything, it basically starts in modern day where a little girl, like, she tells her mom like, oh, hey, dad's coming to pick me up for a visit, blah 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 and everything. And so like the mom goes up in the attic and finds like old like family heirlooms and stuff, and it switches back to the 1800s. And then so you see like the Bell family getting tortured by this witch and all this stuff and all these unexplainable events happening. And then at the end you see how everything kind of connects, and you see that yes, it was a witch, but it wasn't a witch who was torturing Betsy. It was John doing all these things to Betsy and stuff. And Betsy eventually killed her father, but her and her mom both blocked it out because it was too traumatic. And a lot of people actually agree with this theory as well, because it would explain a lot of it would explain why the abuse from the spirit ramped up when Betsy got engaged. It would explain why it kept going until Betsy
called off the engagement.
Yeah, called off the engagement. But then a lot of people are like, well, she called the engagement after her father's death. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you're so traumatized by something that your brain blocks it out, especially back in the 1800s, like they didn't have psychological crap back then. They didn't even know what that was. If you try to diagnose somebody with repressed memories, they're going to call you a witch and run you out of town.
True.
And so like a huge theory is that she was a witch. Like Kate Batts was a witch and knew what John was doing to his daughter. And so people think that John killed Kate because she knew what he was doing to his daughter and she was trying to help Betsy. And so she eventually came back and was attacking John for attacking Betsy. Which honestly, it sounds like all these theories are just kind of like blown out of the water, and the whole story is just very like, what the hell? So everything just sounds kind of like, but honestly, that's like the best theory that fits, because let's really think about like how much that kind of stuff ran rampant back then, because like husbands could take their wives and nobody would say anything because they were married to them. It was very recently that we actually just got a law saying that you can be raped in a marriage. Like, God knows what they were doing to their kids and stuff like that. So a lot of people actually think
divorces really didn't become legal the way they are now until like the 1960s.
Yeah, exactly. So like they were stuck together, which would also explain why the family didn't move. Because why would they need to move if there really wasn't a ghost that was haunting them? It was the patriarch of the family who was doing some really bad shit to their kid. And so that's kind of like how the American Haunting movie goes and stuff. And honestly, it's a very underrated movie. I think like it was very well done and stuff, because at the very end of the movie, after you find out that like John was the one that was abusing Betsy and stuff like that, you find out like the mom watches her daughter be taken off with her ex-husband and stuff, and she looks over and she sees like an apparition of Betsy yelling help her, and you realize, oh shit, there's something going on between that dad and that daughter.
Oh.
Yeah, so the movie was very well done, and honestly, like that's kind of what started my whole like jump off point, because I watched this movie when I was like 12, I think. I think that's when it came out. But I watched this movie when I was younger, and I remember thinking, God, this is such an interesting story. And that's when I started Googling like the Bell Witch and all this stuff. And it was like, hey, based off of true story and all this other stuff. And it's like, it said the same thing we did. All theories and like ideas are based off of exactly what we have. It's just all we have is theories. All we have is theories. I mean, we have all these articles written back in the 1800s. We have all these books that were written back then and stuff. But at the end of the day, all we have are theories and thoughts and kind of things. And it's like, it's kind of like with anything that's supernatural. Like you got to kind of look at it from two perspectives of the, ooh, are you going to get scared, or the logical perspective and stuff.
Right.
And so
I just feel like the original story sounds so fantastical, like, oh yeah, there's just this ghost that just kept talking to him.
Right.
Like that seems so like, what? Like, why did you let it?
I'm sorry, the drinking songs just
right.
Gets
so
me
I mean, I can
hear
see it being that actually it wasn't a disembodied voice. It was somebody who was around a lot.
Yeah.
And so then they were like, oh, it was a ghost. It was a ghost of a witch, but actually it was somebody who, maybe was like a medicine woman type person.
Yeah.
Who was just around a lot, but they didn't want to
what
admit
was going on in the house.
Right. But maybe they didn't want to admit that she was around a lot.
Yeah.
Because of the reputation it would give to the family.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good theory. And that's also another theory. Like there are hundreds of theories that are floating around about this.
It's an old and interesting urban legend story. So there's going to be lots and lots of theories. I actually think the idea that John was abusing his daughter is, probably the most likely.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks and everything, and it really is and stuff. But like,
yeah.
So down here in Tennessee, there is, the infamous Bell Witch Cave and stuff, which is really funny because her name is Kate Batts, but they call her the Bell Witch because she haunted the Bell family and stuff. So there's a Bell Witch Cave, and it's said that Kate actually supposedly lived in it after she had been thrown from the town for being accused of witchcraft and stuff, which also ties into other theories and stuff. This place is spooky. Like I have seen pictures of it and I've seen video of it and everything, and it's like they like it's a huge thing. Like it's kind of like how like they like Adams, Tennessee hypes it up, how Salem, Massachusetts hypes up like the witch trials and like Hocus Pocus and stuff like that. Like they hype it up just like that. Like there's an option to tour the Bell family cabin. The original was torn down, but they built a new one, basically the exact same. In October they have they have the Bell Witch Fest. So from like October 1st to the 31st, they do like haunted overnight tours. They do like special gatherings. They do parties. They do like all these things or whatever. Like if you're down here, like honestly, I do highly suggest you check it out because it's really cool. And it's not that much to like go and tour and everything. And it gives you something to do. But like the town really does hype up this urban legend. Like they use it as a source of income. It's kind of like how Port Angeles used Twilight and bled that movie dry to get tourist attractions and everything.
Did that more than PA did, but
girl,
the Winchester Mansion does stuff.
We had a store. We had a store. Okay,
there were two stores. There was one in Forks. Did you ever see the one in Forks?
Yeah,
it was amazing. I'm sorry, that was one of the coolest stores I've ever seen in my life.
No, and I mean I get it. It's just it's really old when people hear, "Oh yeah, I'm from Washington." Oh my God, are you from Forks? No, I'm not from Forks. No, I've started saying I'm from like Seattle because I just don't want to deal with, oh my God, were you there when they filmed the movie? No, I was not there because they filmed the movie in Vancouver and in Oregon. So
yeah,
we don't look like that. But yeah, no, they like hype it up. Right. So I mean, a lot of the theories from this urban legend could probably come from like people passing it down and the town hyping it up themselves because it's a really good tourist attraction revenue. Like they make a lot of money off of this every year. So, I mean, and it's not like there's really anybody alive from the Bell family to like remember and like say, hey, no, this isn't how this happened and everything. And like
Right.
that's one of the biggest allures for the attraction is like they let the person who's coming, like they let the customer think what they want to think. If you think that the witch is real, then they're going to let you think the witch is real. If you think there's an explanation for it, then they're going to let you think there's an explanation for it. But
Right.
it's just like with any urban legend. It's just like with the Lady of the Lake legend. Like there was an actual murder associated with the Lady of the Lake legend, but then this huge legend comes out of it. And I can't tell you how many like stories I've heard about the Lady of the Lake, how if you say her name as you're driving by, she'll come out of the lake and kill you and stuff. Like there's a lot. So it's kind of like with this, like there was probably this family, like there was this family who was something bad happened to them and something unexplainable happened to them, but over the years and over the centuries, like it just kind of grew into this urban legend that this town kind of has for themselves.
Kind of like like when we covered the Amityville house,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
a terrible thing happened there. A family got excuse the pun, a
Massacred.
killer deal on the house. And and then said it was haunted. And whether or not it's true, it's hard to say
Yeah.
because the
Like it
only
could be
people
true, it
who,
could not be true.
experienced it are the
And don't
ones
get
who
me wrong,
said
I
it
am a
happened.
huge believer in like the supernatural. I'm a huge believer in like, yeah, there could be ghosts and there could be spirits and there could be all that stuff out there and stuff like that because there are things out there that happen that you're just kind of sitting there going, you really can't explain that.
Oh yeah. I have a
Like you
list of
really
experiences.
you
Yeah.
really can't explain it. Like the Skinwalker story that we did. Like yes, you can explain parts of it, but you can't explain all of it.
So I want to intersect for just a second here because I have experiences with supernatural. In fact, I have to be really careful with a lot of supernatural stuff. And you can take this at face value, believe whatever you want to believe, doesn't matter. So I am pretty empathic. I have trouble. Like COVID has been a really tough time for me because so many people are just at their breaking point that everywhere
Yeah.
I go, it's a lot. It's a lot. And that's part of why I started, my own business and I'm working from home is that I don't
Yeah.
have to go anywhere anymore right now. And
Right.
it's
We
nice.
don't do anything.
Um, but so because of this though, I've had experiences of things I can't explain. I have a picture frame that was in my living room that was hanging on the wall that just started swinging by itself when I was alone at home. I've had a shadow person standing at the foot of my bed. I've had experience. I've seen an apparition, and that the apparition that I've seen ties in with the Lady of the Lake story that we'll cover at another time.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that one. But so I've seen things that I have to believe in the supernatural because there's literally no explanation other
Oh
than
yeah.
some of the stuff that I've experienced, right? However, even to me, the idea that there was a disembodied voice and an apparition that continued to talk to them and they just took it, especially in such a superstitious time,
Yeah.
seems really unfathomable to me. So there's
Yeah.
got to be an element of the story somewhere where some
That's
of
just
it
not
is
being
truth
told.
and most of it is myth.
Yeah. And
Because
like that's why I wholeheartedly believe like the whole John was probably abusing his daughter storyline comes in. Like as much as I don't want to believe that it is probably something that did happen because when something traumatic happens to us, our brain processes it completely different.
yeah,
Like it
yeah,
we can block whole memories out of our minds because it's just so traumatic to think about that like if a kid witnesses like their cousin going missing, like getting snatched from somewhere and their cousin going missing and like or they see somebody die or whatever, they can block almost all of those memories out because it's just so traumatic to them that they can't think about it without their mind becoming unraveled. And it's a coping mechanism for trauma abuse survivors and stuff like that as well.
yep. There was a kid I used to babysit, and I think I've talked about it in a previous episode, but there was a kid I used to babysit who suffered a really traumatic experience and it caused brain damage and
Yeah.
to the point where he didn't talk for a long time after and he blocked out everything that happened.
No, that does happen. It does happen a lot. And unfortunately, like, back then it probably would just be brushed off. And it's like the fact that, like, not only like everybody in the family thought it was this ghost, and the kids I would understand, them, believing their parents and stuff like, oh, we're being haunted by an apparition. But I can totally see something happening, like John doing something and Lucy and Betsy just kind of blocking it out. And then Lucy telling her kids, oh, yeah, we're being haunted by this apparition. But then that doesn't explain, like, reports of this same apparition coming back 7 years later and staying with them for a week and stuff. So then that also ties into, like, maybe there's more to maybe there was something, but at the same time, like, unless we have a time machine and we can go back to when this all happened, we're never actually going to know the full story. Like,
so here's my real question. I mean, I guess at the end of the day. So, I mean, it's a cabin, right? So it's bound to probably be like 1 or 2 rooms, not
yeah,
a
I've seen
big
the pictures.
cabin.
It's like 3 rooms, I think.
Right. So, I mean,
it's a 1-story cabin too, so it's not like it's 2 stories.
Right. No, this was early 1800s. Like, they just didn't really. Yeah. No. But I'm wondering if, are there other witness accounts outside of the family? And also, I mean,
yeah, like the guy
stories
James,
only coming from,
like the guy James who went and stayed with the family to like there were 2 people outside of the family who saw all this stuff and was like, yeah, these people aren't crazy, they're not making it up. Then that's what I mentioned in the beginning, is like their family friend James who came and like actually talked to them, like talked to the spirit and asked them like who the spirit was. Like, that's who asked them who the spirit was their family friend James. And then another guy,
and the family didn't think to do that themselves.
Yeah, like back when I said like James was a family friend who like stayed with them and stuff like that, and he actually wrote like articles on it and stuff. And then there was another guy also named James, because James was a very common name back then, just like Biblical. John. And so another guy named James, he was actually like, he did not believe that the bells were telling the truth. Like, he was like, no, these guys are lying. Like, they're doing it for attention. They're like there's no ghost. Like, something's going on in that family and they're just trying to hide it and everything. And like, he had come up with a test, to basically test the knowledge of the ghost, basically, because this ghost supposedly knew all these things about people and stuff. So he came up with a test, and it was like stuff that only he knew and everything. Like, he didn't talk to anybody about it. He didn't say anything to anybody. Like, he didn't mention it to the family. He just came and stayed with the family, and he executed this test, and the ghost knew everything he did. Like, the ghost knew all the answers to all the questions that he was going to ask. And he eventually was like, there's no way in hell that this family is making this up, because there's no way anybody could know these answers unless I told them. And I was like, what? And like, these guys eventually went on to write like articles about this and documentation about this and everything. Like, hey, this isn't like something that they're making up and everything. Like, there's definitely something going on. So, I mean, there were people outside of the family that knew this. And it was also like the fact that like the family knew things about people in the town that nobody else knew. Like, that was also a huge red flag to people in the town. Like, how do you know these things about us? How do you know so-and-so's been doing this? How do you know so-and-so's been doing that? Like, if we don't know this, because, small towns back then, the villagers knew like what you were doing. They knew what time you go to bed at night. Like, let's be real here. Like, they would know if you cut your hair 2 inches because, witchcraft and stuff. So, like, let's be real here. So it's like, people would be like, well, how do you know like what's going on when we don't even know what's going on and stuff? So it's kind of like a, there probably was a perfectly reasonable explanation for why Betsy was the main target of the spirit. And it was probably because it wasn't the spirit at all. It was her father. And then John's eventual end came from the fact that the spirit kind of, another thing that is a good theory with it is, like, and this was actually mentioned in the movie too, was that the spirit wasn't actually a spirit at all. It was a spirit born of the innocence that Betsy had lost when her father had started sexually abusing her.
So that kind of ties in with, so even when I was little, I used to study supernatural and paranormal stuff. I used to
because
check
we're
out
fucking
every
weird.
book I
That's
could get
why.
Out of the library.
Because we're fucking weird. That's why.
Yeah, well, we have good people that feel the same, or they wouldn't still be listening, I imagine.
Right, and we love each and every one of you weirdos. Like, let me tell you.
Yeah, chillers, you guys are awesome. So I just, I remember reading something about how a lot of experts, and I think this may have actually been, and please don't quote me on this because I don't know if it's true, but I think it was an Ed and Lorraine Warren theory that
It probably
poltergeist
is, because it always is.
poltergeist activity was actually generally created by a younger person experiencing trauma. Like it
Oh,
was,
yeah.
them reaching parts of their brain and either connecting with another spirit through that, or, like a telekinesis thing,
Oh, yeah.
or like a uh, thing where they were able to make objects like ESP, right?
Yeah, no, and I wholeheartedly believe that too. Like,
So it's highly
wholeheartedly believe that.
possible that this was a manifestation of Betsy's stress if she
Oh,
was
yeah.
being abused.
Oh, yeah, and, like, I wholeheartedly believe that and everything, because, like, and, a few theories do back that up and stuff, because that's been something that's been, like, passed down through, like years of study and everything. Like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, because, we as humans, we don't use all of our brain. Like, we don't. We don't use all of our brain. If we had unlocked all of our brain power, then we'd be unstoppable. But, like, kids are just so, not pliable, but they're very much more in tune with, like, themselves. Like, there's theories that go around saying, like, babies, when they're born, they know everything in the universe, but they just have no way of saying it, because by the time they start learning how to talk, they just forget everything. And so it is super possible. And that's why I brought up the abuse angle, is because a lot of theories do point to that, of, like, the spirit wasn't really a spirit at all. It was the manifestation of, like, the innocence that she lost because of what her dad's doing to her. And it was, like, the manifestation of her anger and all that stuff. And so it could definitely be that. But like I said, at the end of the day, we don't really know, because we can't exactly go back and look.
Right.
So all we're left with is urban legends and stories and campfire ghost tales and stuff like that, like things that you tell around the ghost story. But, like, at the end of the day, with any of these folklores and stories, like I said, all we have are separate accounts of some evidence that seem like it's the truth, and some evidence that seem like it's kind of super out there, like the ghost singing drinking songs at a funeral. But with the different theories being tossed around, do you think the Bell Witch was a real thing, or was it just another local legend made up to make money?
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Chill. For more information, including case notes, photos, and sources, visit our website at truecrimeandchill.com. You can also stay connected with us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Look for new episodes from us each week on Tuesday.